Okay, Tim, good to see you again. Thanks for joining me today. Can you tell me a little bit about your background in print, mate?
Christ, that's a long time ago. Trained at the London College of Print, where my father was a lecturer, a spell as a machine minder before joining the sales of a pre-press company. I think I enjoyed that more than the latter stages in my career, frankly. Various senior manager roles in the sector before setting up a production consultancy and eventually an outsourcing and procurement business called Paper Hat.
Of course, that's where I know you from, isn't it? From many years gone by. So what are you doing these days, mate?
I've returned to consulting to keep vendors in check and stop them overcharging my clients. A bit like yourselves, a bit like free press, really. Now, knowing you, that'll elicit a fairly sharp response.
I'm behaving myself today, Tim. I'll have you know, I'm behaving myself. So the topic of today is print buying in ERP CRM. I'll get to the ERP CRM bit in a little while. I thought we'd break it up. Print buying. This is a subject that you know an awful lot about. I know that, and essentially how it's changing. You've been around the block a few times now. What are your thoughts on how print buying has changed?
Well, looking at it from the client side, more so nowadays. To be honest, I've been really shocked at what clients are still prepared to pay a premium for. The old print management model served clients well when the focus was bringing agency networks into line, but it's commercially unsound now. Any CFO worth his salt, and in certain cases they already are, should be asking, is it 20 years? It's 20 years on, and can we still be delivering double-digit savings? Especially when raw materials, rent and labour have significantly increased in price. It's the law of diminishing returns. It can't make sense.
I've got to pick you up on that. I mean, commercially unsound. I mean, what do you mean to say by that? Aren't you just generalise a little bit too much in your opening comment then? Because, to say something's commercially unsound, you really have to have something to follow it and maybe an alternative option that works. And, ultimately, are you not part of this problem with your background?
Very Piers Morgan with your spiky question there, Kelvin. I'd like to think I was part of the solution at the time. Sadly, there seems no desire to do anything groundbreaking with clients. Everything seems to be focused on how do we improve what we have rather than asking, should we do it this way at all?
Yeah. Isn't that the market demand, though? I mean, client expectations, the clients expect things in a certain way and the market, it just delivers. It's easy to say things need to be groundbreaking, but the change to break the ground needs to come from the customer and not the supplier, doesn't it?
Well, I think the solution was right at the time. It's just not fit for purpose now, and it hasn't been for a period. Yeah, I think if you look back, the Centurions, the Williams Lees, they had, it was something new. There were big savings to go after. I'm not sure and I think you're right, we were part of its, or I was certainly part of its slide down the commercial scale. It needs to be sold as a wider consulting piece.
Yeah.
To obtain the correct credibility. I think we were naive in thinking that procurement departments would respect us for delivering savings to them quickly. In fact, what we did was make a rod for our own backs with each new person in the role requiring a new target to hit. The early days at Black & Decker, we asked the CFO what he would do with the savings. He said he'd reinvest them. Well, he didn't. He took it out of their budget. And so the cycle began, more savings next year, more savings next year. And to be fair, print management companies have had to respond, and not always in the correct fashion.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So, if you could, how would you fix it? And what would you do now if you had the time again to do things differently? Because here, aren't we talking about print procurement in general?
Yeah, I think you've got to bring in production talent, to serious production talent into big brands. Sadly, the expertise is still pretty woeful You've got procurement generalists who are pretty good at what they do, but don't have that key knowledge to be able to drive it. And I'm sorry, but with things like paper, machine time, people all rising in value. How can you possibly, with something that's got 50% raw materials, be delivering double-digit savings every year? It's just not possible, Kel.
Yeah, you say not sustainable.
I don't think it's been sustainable for a while. I do understand that procurement people have to deliver savings all the time. A new target. I was part of that in my recent role with GSK. It's not just about people. It's about how you support those people as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Because those changes must start with the brands, but if they're not going to bring the relevant production people in internally, then they're not going to know what they want, are they? That's the thing. So,
well, I think it's we've accepted it was an industry. We accepted it was an industry before, but driven through advertising agencies, and we completely changed the model. I think the commercial aspects and the way that we reward print management companies is incorrect, and it drives them to do things that aren't in the best interest of the clients.
I just can't help feeling that the changes, that if changes are needed, then they need to be made by the customer. The brand needs to make those changes, because what we do well, we all do well, is we respond to the needs of our customer. And me as a sales guy, I chase my customer. I want to get that deal. I want to do well. I want to do well for the company. So, I do think it does. I always think it comes back to the customer to change the status quo.
Well, it comes back to the customer. It also comes down to education. How do we, they're prepared to be educated by us, but sadly they feel it's a commodity. I think if I were to start looking at it again today, and I'm absolutely not, I'm quite happy chatting to you from the confines of my office in Kent. I certainly wouldn't deal with the print buyers first. They're only part of the solution. If you need to support them in a much wider technology and process solution, it should start with the technology. I don't think you need the layers and layers of account managers, account directors, global management structures. You need to engage with the organisation on all levels. Data science, IT, finance, marketing, and procurement. Otherwise, the information only comes through a single channel. In recent times, I've been dealing with the GMs of business, and they're quite happy that it's value for money. And I think you have to accept the savings have been had and focus on how can it work better? How can it integrate with my ERP system? That 20 years of knowledge and directing clients to innovation still needs to be there, but it needs to have a proper framework about it. And for me, the start point is technology.
Hey, I can only agree. I mean, for me, what we do is we supply the technology to the market in a reactive format. Somebody wins a contract, as you know, I'm rolled out, we go there, we implement the technology, we start with the engagement. You're talking to the market at a different level now. So we're talking to the same market for the same reason, for the same purpose, but somewhere in between there, I think there's disparity. We don't engage with, the message doesn't filter through the organisation to the same people. And I see that sometimes education is needed. So,
but I don't know how you do that. Back to my point on how do you go about it? I remember the original sell to Sony. The savings were important, but I was advised by Omnicom's media division that we need a reason. We need a reason for these savings, and in that case, it was a dam system. But the big sell for everybody was don't pay the exorbitant rates of your network agencies. So there was a big message there. We've all got a little bit more sophisticated. The client vaguely knows how it all is put together. They're all building their own ecosystem. So I'm not saying it's easy, but you need more than procurement. I was in the advantageous position recently of being able to talk to the general manager, the CFO, the people on the shop floor. So we really drove an ROI. I've sympathy with companies like VPress because it's hard to get to those people. It's hard to get and have that conversation, but it's essential for the next phase of print management if it exists on its own.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I look backwards, and I think going back to years ago, London Bridge meetings we used to have, when sometimes I don't think I understood the value of those savings, how significant they were. So therefore, sometimes it was difficult. You're not saying you're going to save 5-10%. You were saving 20, 30%, 40%. For brands, and that kind of knowledge comes through with time. And I look back and I reflect, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago to meetings that we've had where I can think that, wow, I wish I knew just how much value I was adding at the time. I might have charged differently.
I don't think we knew how. I came from a print and a sales background, so I had technical knowledge. But, I developed my procurement knowledge as I went, where we were happy to charge a percentage on our services, the likes of an Accenture would be charging a percentage of what they saved.
Yeah.
And what was clever is they reinvested the money into technology. So, when the revenues dropped on just broking and trading, and let's be blunt, a print manager is a broker for which you pay a fee. Put VPress technology in, some good people in a process, doesn't need much else. So you have to ask, is that brokerage fee correct when you've got excellent technology out there? The answer is no. And when these print management clients really wake up to it, there's going to be a big shake-up, and that's going to be the change. Hopefully I'm around to advise, but there's no guarantees. As you quite nicely pointed out, I'm in advancing years, Kelvin.
But seriously, I mean, to pick you up on that again, because I don't like to give you an easy ride here. You've had global clients, you've needed global technology, and you've had to do global fulfillment. Now, I've just been the technology part of that in the past, but you've had to shift boxes from A to B and make sure there's brand consistency. And I do think that print management fundamentally has a value add there. I think print management at that level, there is a proposition there that offers, it makes sure that premium brand is on brand every time, in every location, in every medium. So
I don't disagree. I just think, you hit it on the head. We got you involved after we won the business, or we'd get you involved as we were pitching the business. But sometimes, we weren't talking to the technology department, GSK, the data science department, that, all of a sudden everyone came together. Looking back, in hindsight is 2020 vision, we should have waited, although one account, as you well know, took a year to open. And you're almost at that stage prepared to accept anything to get a return on your investment. But it needs great people. It needs great technology and a process. Keeping things on brand, that's what your technology is for, and that can drive that. The knowledge is wrapped up in these people, and it's not a commodity. That still rankles with me, even working on client side, when some say, well, just, it's 10 of those. Oh, okay, you're in procurement. How many A4 sheets on A4 pages on a B1 sheet? And they look at you blank. What's the least obvious colour to the eye? Well, why is that important? Well, it's important if it's got your logo in the middle of it. That knowledge is still required. And I refute that it's AI and machine learning all the time for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that leads us nicely on to the second part of our conversation today, systems, and namely ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, for those of you who don't know, and CRM, Customer Relationship Management, integration, something at VPress we're extremely busy with. And during this last year, we've easily done a dozen and a half of these major global installs within the B2B sector. So Tim, systems, looking at systems in the market today, I know you've become very technically aware in the past few years compared to where you were. Cooper, SAP Ariba, Oracle, Salesforce.com, these kind of platforms, they're now providing a guiding way in which to do business. So they offer a multitude of advantages to both the customer and suppliers. As a print supplier, you can be paid in 4 working days with no invoicing. I mean, that alone is a huge feat. But this is replicated in our daily lives by the way we use the internet. You look at, our reliance upon Amazon Prime, the way we pay, one-touch swipe on our mobile phones, buying from within social media. We're evolving. Things are moving forward in a direction. I'm not going to say the true direction. They are moving forward in a direction. But my question to you is, do you think that these systems and what they're doing in the B2B market offer a positive and negative in what we do?
Yeah, I'll come to that. A point you made there, and I do want to pick you up on that. Just because we've input these systems or put them into our businesses doesn't mean that you can get paid in 4 days. I've been working with a supplier who's been asked to extend their terms from 120 to 180 days, where that same customer is driving their corporate and social responsibility agenda. It's wrong. But yeah, having just worked with the latest incarnation of Ariba, I have to say I was impressed with the improvements they've made to it, but it still isn't category specific. And it's not enough to deal with the complexities of Marcom's production. You need more. You need to have an industry specific plugin. I can't think of a good web to print solution, but a good web to print solution. Oh, sorry, VPress. Yeah, came to mind. Now, on a serious note, it's absolutely required. And you see, as you said, in your everyday internet life, you've got your Office 365 and beautifully API'd apps you can select to make your life easy. There's no difference. I remember a guy at Sony saying to me, Tim, I don't want another icon on my desktop. Well, he'd be delighted now that, you can just navigate through your core business to specific technologies and it will integrate completely. Your system does sometimes, Kelvin.
There's lots of digs towards me here, Tim. But it's okay.
I've learned through bitter experience to get my retaliation in first with you, Kelvin.
That's okay, I welcome it, you know that. So anyway, your embracing of technology and specifically Marcom's tech is music to my ears. Fundamentally it's something what we do and moving forward, we're going to expand considerably on this. And today, the last 2 decades, we've been reactive to the market. And what a lot of people don't appreciate is that we're moving towards where there's different opinions of Industry 4.0, but and how you interpret that. I fully believe we're in amongst of it, and it's a major change to how industry operates. But COVID, COVID is a terrible thing. The pandemic, how we reacted to it, but I do think it's humanity. We've got to take positives from it. It's accelerated our advancement into how we're utilizing technology and doing less of the mundane and more of the automated, which fundamentally for me is good for our industry. I think print needed to move forward a little bit. I think print needed to move forward to be part of Marcom's. We're having discussions now where your personalized piece of print has a lifespan of 3 weeks. An email coming into your inbox has a lifespan of 3 seconds. They're probably not accurate figures because I've rounded the timeframes off there. But what do you think? What do you think about the acceleration into the new normal digital transformation and where we are now?
I think we have to be careful because when you talk about it, some of these things being a good thing, there are people have lost their lives through COVID. But I think you're onto something. I think coming out the other end of this, people's lives will get better. I remember my dad saying, computers are around for us to make our lives easier and work less and have more leisure time, which turned out to be an utter nonsense. Undoubtedly, people have actually to remote working. In the 7 months I was at GSK, I never met a single stakeholder. I learned all their systems remotely and actually signed up for new technologies. Would I like to have met them first in the flesh? Absolutely. I don't think there will ever be a substitute for that. But being able to do a mixture of both, being able to organise your day, and I don't mean back-to-back meetings. As soon as someone sees a gap in your diary, my diary had 5 or 6 meetings a day before I started when I was at GSK, because you're there. When you go to the toilet, I think it has accelerated. It will accelerate further, and I think it will be good for the people in the industry as well. I'm not saying a machine miner can necessarily work from home effectively, but I think people are prepared to put up with this type of meeting, but not all the time. So yeah, it's definitely moving on. I think the print industry has moved on immeasurably in the last 10, 15 years. It's changed the way it approaches clients. And I think it's a good thing. Has it got a way to go? Yes. Do they need a seat at the table? Yes. I'm not sure how they get it. But yeah, I mean, it will end up being a very good thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there you mentioned, and one of them, the change, the working remotely. I was tiring of planes, trains, and automobiles, traveling around, and I started off working in South Africa this morning. I'm currently still in Buckinghamshire, and this evening I'll be finishing off in America. So, and I'm doing it all from the comfort of my little office here. One thing that reminds me is many years ago, I went to see a brand called Greggs. For anyone listening to this who doesn't know what Greggs is, it's a high-end luxury brand here in the UK that offers top-notch snack food. And I went and I saw the print buyer there, and he was looking at a web-to-print system, but he didn't want one. And I asked him, why are you looking at a web-to-print system? We're talking over 10 years ago. I said, why are you looking at web to print? He said, the problem is Greg grows, and Greg's is now open. It's open in Europe. It's everywhere now. As Greg grows, we have a huge number of suppliers, and we just don't get the chance to meet them. There's nothing wrong with any of them. They're all great suppliers, but we just need to change the way that we work in order to manage our supply chain. And that kind of hit me from left field, really, sort of, that he was even thinking that. But
I don't think you've done your chances any good either there, because Roger Whiteside, who's the CEO, is a friend of mine and an ex-client from Threshers, so I shouldn't imagine you'll get in the door there now. I think it does frighten people that, how long will it take to put in? You've been doing it for a long while. You've got a very stable technology, but people are trying to break new ground, and some of the things that I certainly looked at GSK were new to me, and a real bonus for marketeers who do want to spend part of their time at home, online measurement of people looking at shelves, and it's really good stuff. But there is a tendency to, going back to our earlier points, of let's just make what we've got better, bank the savings, it's efficient enough. Who raised, and especially now with people being laid off through COVID, do I really want to put my head above the parapet? I wouldn't. When I went to Sony and said, you should bin all of your 33 Saatchi agencies, I wasn't married, I just moved on to the next great idea. Those halcyon days. No, it didn't impact me. We were really pushing boundaries, and I do feel a little sorry for the entrepreneurs now. It seems the biggest opportunities, and it's sad that where suppliers are failing and people are picking up bargains. But what's the answer? You've got to keep driving forward, and technology, as I say, but when I'm speaking to clients now, technology is the start point.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree for many reasons, but we are a technology company. So with that in mind, where do you think purchasing, and more importantly, where do you think print purchasing meets these kind of systems in the market? I know you've done these integrations. I know I've done these integrations for you in the past, and you've used other systems, but so you know how important they are as part of procurement. But
I suppose I'm in the enviable position now of not taking something unless I think the client's serious. But it's getting everybody around the table. Any client who thinks the print buyer, print consultant is dead, and it's all going to be push button and baskets and catalogues, that's wrong. Where does the innovation come from? That it's a big part of it, and as you say, automate that part. But that knowledge is really important. I remember, I think we had the account 12 years, and the guys at Wrigley said to me, change what you like, whatever tech you want, but don't change the people on the account. We need them to drive it. So for me, if it's possible, and I've hopefully got a gig for March, talking to a retailer, and they're in about 8 different countries. If I can drag them towards getting everyone around the table, the marketing, the procurement, and someone from the senior exec team, finance, to look from the outset what the objective is, what's the ROI, what do a GM said to me, I'm not worried about the savings. I really am going to give it back to these guys. If it works better, faster, integrates with our ERP better, no problem. So, probably harping on about that a little bit too much, but get everyone around the table. I know it's difficult.
Do you think brands appreciate the value of the companies they engage with, or they chase the bottom line and those double-digit savings you mentioned early on? Because we're taught now we need empathy. We need to have well-being for within ourselves. We need to understand and appreciate everybody else, which is all right. I agree with that. But when it actually comes down to a hard-nosed commercial decision, do you think those brands they appreciate the loyalty and the effort that goes in to fulfill and maintain the brand? Because if a brand's correctly represented through the term of a contract, that's a success. The fact that it's not gone wrong is a success. Are they still going to try and squeeze those margins? And is there a loyalty there?
God, that's a loaded question. To be completely honest, no. It depends what department. As I say, I've been lucky since I've finished to work with some pretty enlightened brands. But that said, they've got their targets. I was part of the vendor consolidation process, GSK, renegotiating contracts, and yes, I was writing a 21 savings plan. I think all the time that procurement departments are driven by that, and they are, and you don't have the CFO and the GM and some knowledge inside the business, and I'm speaking specifically print now, then I think there's a problem. No, I'd have to say in a one-line answer that the focus still is commercial, and they'll want more and more every year.
I'm tempted to go back to the beginning and say therein lies the problem.
It is the problem, but what is it they say? The trouble with angry young men is they become just angry old men, and nobody listens to them. It's wrong, and you and I have and probably will in the future make hours of conversation on the commercial aspects, unless you can get on these people. But you have to remember of I better not say the amount, but the amount of print management that was in the UK, £75 million worth of spend, was tiny by comparison. There's only so many things these guys can decide to care about in one day. Sales, technology, it is important. And I think that's the problem, and it's the problem for dealing with print management companies, because they reconcile it every year, every 2 or 3 years. They try and measure them on KPIs, but you've got people measuring KPIs who have little or no idea how to do it effectively. And so the print manager pivots and tries to make money in areas that perhaps they shouldn't. And so that builds distrust in the system and goes to the credibility of it. There is a really simple way of dealing with that problem or that issue once and for all. But you've got to get everyone around the table. It's not savings; they don't exist, and anyone thinks they do is a fool.
So, okay, so what advice would you give to someone like me? So, technology company, we don't put ink on paper. We're never going to put ink on paper. But more and more brands direct are contacting us, asking for the knowledge of how we engage their suppliers with their procurement systems and their ways of working. So I'm in a reactive position in the market. So where do you think companies like ours, VPress Web to Print Company, who engage at this level, what should we be doing?
I think I said recently, you've got to be brave. You've got to get suppliers, and some of the suppliers that you've got have got competitive systems. If you've got an opportunity, you've almost got to put that aside and just say, look, we need to talk to you in the round. This can't just be about how many dump bins you produce, how many ads you produce. How does it connect to other things? And just recently, there are such good technologies out there. There's your technology. There's some really complementary bits. I think you've got to solve a problem. Print management solved a problem over being ripped off. People like Tag, the old Tag, solved the problem because they did adaptation and transcreation at a rate that was about a sixth of what the ad agencies charged, and some. That solved the problem. We've all learned of that now. So how do we knit these bits together? I'm giving a talk on Monday to a chemical conference. It's fine to disaggregate the idea and the media, because the media is a plan, and arguably can be done like this. Whereas execution, of which print is just one channel, there's 30 or 40 of those. So how do you get those all together? And I think you'll keep getting apps. You need a core technology, and you mentioned it earlier on, it's Ariba, but what do you add to it? And that's tough. It's tough for the people inside the business. I was looking at shopper marketing previously, a fantastic stakeholder, but she said, you need to guide me through. And some of these technologies I was having to get up to speed with. So how does that fit with that? I mean, putting these together, and everyone wants to sell their technology, and as we all know, made money in the gold rush, people selling the picks and shovels. But who decides what you need? And I think there's an iterative process. One thing I've always admired about your business, and it's not you, Kelvin, is the fact that you constantly update it. But you don't. It's not a bell or a whistle for a bell and whistle's sake. It's appropriate to the feedback you get. I've seen so much tech put in that never delivers its ROI.
Yeah, you and me both. I think as a business, if we stand still, then we no longer have a business, and we don't have a position in the market. So,
I think you've got to talk to people who are potential competitors. What do we know about this business? I rather than just hit the phone, much more research. I do more research now than I've ever done in my life. What is it? I think the issue is, what's the pain point I can help you with? And that print, as big an industry is a tiny piece of that Marcom's budget. You've stayed stable as a business for many years and added things to it and moved in different directions. And I think that the time is certainly fertile ground for you to expand further. I think there are things I spoke to you the other week, there are things that you're building into it that will add more value. But I think you probably need to talk to some other vendors as well and get a proper discovery session with the customer.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what the future holds, but Tim, I knew this would go really quickly. And once we got going, thank you so much. The one last thing I would request from you, so as a man of your substantial age and wisely experience, if you had one piece of advice for anyone in the print industry listening to this, what would it be?
Never accept an interview from yourself would be one. I don't know why I accepted you. You're never nice to me. I think, on a serious note, I'm still passionate about the industry, and we've started to do it. Don't just come up with a buzz phrase, make, adapt. So come up with a genuine solution and wait till you can find one and really push that advantage, not just push a service.
Yeah, no, wise words indeed. Tim Peppier, thank you very much. Thank you for your time today.